that with clarity and alignment, the universe can work with immense speed because the universe doesn't see size. You could ask for $1 million or $100 to the universe. It's no different. It's how you interact with the energy of that that makes the difference.
Hey everyone, Andrew here, otherwise known as the guy who wrote the last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read. And I've got another really awesome YouTube feature interview here. Kelly Ruta is on with me, and I am I'm not, whatever I say here, I'm not going to do her justice in this introduction. I think it's safe to say she is a breakthrough strategist. She's got all the credentials. She's a former clinical psychotherapist with 2 decades of experience under her belt. She helps women elevate into the 1% by disrupting themselves to create a powerful identity that matches the business outcomes they desire. That's right, she helps them in business. And the reason I found my way to Kelly is because we had ourselves a conversation about business and about succeeding in that world. And through our conversation, it became clear to me, wow, Kelly understands a lot, including an appreciation for law of attraction. And I thought, what if we can take a breakthrough strategist, a mindset expert, and bring her on to this and get her perspective, regarding law of attraction and everything around it, and see where you guys would benefit. So with that nice, huge prop up of an intro, Kelly Ruta, thanks so much for being here. Welcome to my YouTube channel.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to kick this off.
You're in this very weird space of mindset that can kind of fit into practicality and woo-woo, for lack of like a better anything else.
Yes.
I'm wondering, how do you, as an expert and as someone who's facilitating others and keeping them on board, how do you walk that fine line in terms of both worlds?
For me, it's about being able to dance between both with grace and flow and ease. And so I make sure that when I work with women entrepreneurs, that yes, we're talking about hardcore things like how your brain gets wired and how you can rewire it and how you create habits of behavior that serve your business. But we're also talking about other things like how working on your mindset is the best bang for your buck because your energy has no choice except to elevate when your mindset elevates, right? So it's about being able to talk about the latest science, hard and soft, but also being able to cross with confidence over into other areas that some people call woo, some people call energy, some people call spirituality. I typically just say it's talking about the universe and the fact that the universe is run by law. It's not woo, it's law. Just because we don't understand it or it's relatively new to mainstream conversation doesn't mean it isn't valid, right? So it's just about doing that dance and being able to have a conversation with people where it's high level, but you can also dive into the nuances of things because that's where people really start to connect the dots and see why leaning into something like deep mindset work or the law of attraction can be so incredibly beneficial. Regardless of whether it's business or relationships or finances, does not matter. That's really where the magic starts to happen.
All right. Thank you. I hear this answer, and like what popped into my mind is sometimes the limit is the label. We assign meaning to something that may or may not have an impact on what we're trying to actually accomplish, and we use that as an excuse to hold us back. Whereas the cool thing about mindset and the cool thing about understanding human psychology is, even though you don't have to give something a label, if you're really going to be in that mode, you might as well strategically put a label on in a way that it's advantageous to you.
Absolutely.
And you could use it to your benefit.
Absolutely. It's so funny you just said this. I just wrote an email to my list. John Maxwell, who's very, very well respected in both business industries and certain niches, he wrote a quote about how, some people who fail and they splatter, and some people who fail and they bounce. So he calls them splatterers or bouncers. And I have respect for him. He's a very intelligent, very successful man. But in my email, I wrote about the importance of not really being willing to be assigned in a binary way to a label like that. You can see that you splattered in the past. In other words, you failed and you had a lot of trouble getting back up. but you can build a skill set to become somebody who bounces. So don't let labels that, famous people put out in the world define who you are or make you believe that you're either in one camp or you're in the other camp. Because once you believe that, you've really locked yourself in, and you're going to feel and experience being limited rather than limitless, which is a word I use a lot in my business.
I love it. I love it. Now, I mean, we're learning more and more about each other, which is always fun. It's always fun
Yeah,
to find someone that like we vibe on a lot of things, and we learn all these different pieces, and you kind of get better insights from people in that way. And I'm sure you know that I'm a huge proponent of momentum, like
yes,
the importance of how that hitches on. I'm making the assumption that you're on board with that, but I'm curious,
100%.
what's your experience in terms of when pardon me, when you're helping your clients, where does momentum come into play for them, and how early in the process do you try to get that going for them?
It's huge. And the reason why is because it's so much easier to maintain momentum than it is to constantly stop and start. So, when we're talking about the mental energy, the emotional energy, sometimes the physical energy, depending on where you're directing your momentum, right? That energy, there's a big requirement when you're trying to start or restart something, and a much lesser requirement when you're looking to maintain momentum. That's one of the reasons why I love deep transformational mindset work so much, because so many people stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. We've heard that phrase, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, and that does happen. But if you have strategies and skills in place to really up your resilience as a human being, then that doesn't really knock you off your game, and you can get right back into motion. And that's just the most energy efficient thing that
Mm.
you could be doing towards any end. I'm not just talking about business, anything you're looking to accomplish.
Right. I love hearing you put it that way, and I think it's great for people to hear it that way because you know me, I'm like, obviously, I'm always trying to push, and whether it's my book or any book, I'm saying find law of attraction methods or techniques that are fun for you and just do them.
Yes.
And even hearing you say that, it's like there's an even higher level strategy where if you ever don't feel like doing something, you might be more motivated just in the understanding that by doing it, you're feeding more momentum. So it's almost like a strategic thing. Like hopefully you're going to have fun doing that method, whether it's gratitude or
Right.
visualization or whatever. But also when the ego's starting to creep in behind saying maybe we don't have to do today, that's where you can tell yourself, well, actually strategically, even though I don't need to, I'm going to, because that's going to get me to a higher level, kind of like an athlete. Like the fact that they're working on their skills or their body or whatever, they don't have to do it that day, even if they're a major home run hitter, but it's going to keep them in better shape for a longer shape to get the bigger contracts, to get all the wins, to get all the rings, all the titles, everything. There is a method to the madness of just reminding yourself that by feeding the momentum, you are feeding the success of your future self.
No question. And I would even go so far as to say it's not almost strategic, it's intentionally strategic the way I teach it.
Mm,
Because, mindset out in the world has, I almost hesitate in using the word because a lot of people don't understand what it means. And most people teaching it teach it in a very, they teach it poorly, to be quite honest. They teach it on a very surface level. They teach you how to think like a millionaire or think like a CEO or think like an expert, which is great, except for the fact that your conscious mind's only really responsible for about 5% of what's going on. So that's fantastic that you address that 5%. But if you're not learning strategically how to reprogram your unconscious mind, deal with your ego, strategically deal with it, deal with your emotions. And this is not just in business, right? Anything that you are trying to accomplish using law of attraction or any other universal law, it's going to press your buttons along the way, especially when you're in the gap between the I realize I desire this, but I'm not quite yet experiencing it. When you're in that gap, you really have to manage your emotions well. And then human behavior, I mean, that's just one of the most interesting things you could ever study. But really, the key is creating habits. Guess what? Your brain does not like to create habits, not a
mm,
fan, but your brain's a huge fan once you have one. So you've
yes.
got to learn to address all of these things strategically not just when it's convenient, and it's not just I'm going to go make a vision board and think $1 million is coming my way in 30 days. It doesn't work like that because you can't escape the human condition. You are a human person on the planet trying to get incredible things done, and you have to learn to work with your human condition and with things like law of attraction and the other universal laws.
Now, I heard you talking about, managing your emotions. And when I hear that, I might even be misinterpreting everything that you say there, but my brain went straight to gratitude, just
Mm.
as a method by which we can, promote positive emotions. And even looking at how you nod, I imagine that's part of the equation of what you do for your clients. I'm curious, like, how do you strategically use gratitude when you're helping the people that you work with?
I will tell you, it's so interesting. The women that I work with, gratitude is not something they struggle with
Mm,
almost ever, almost
interesting.
ever. What they struggle with is guilt, shame, frustration, doubt, and anger. That's what they struggle with. And
Mm,
so they almost everyone, before they even start working with me, they have some sort of active appreciation or gratitude practice in place, formally or informally, right? So they come to me grateful. They're already at a pretty high level of success. Most of them are at multiple six figures when they come to me and are wanting to go to seven and eight figures. And what they're struggling with is all this stuff that comes up when you go to make such a big leap of faith, right? All this doubt, all of this, who am I to think that I could do something like that? Who am I to believe that I deserve that kind of abundance? All of those things. So, gratitude's a big part of the picture, but it's not one they struggle with, which
mm,
is really interesting. They've read all the books. Do you know what I mean? By the time they've
yes.
gotten to me. So they know the feel good stuff is important, but they also know when you don't have strategic skills to manage the other stuff when it comes up, that the ego goes, oh, it's playtime. Let's do this. This is going to be so much fun because now you're doubtful and you're angry and you're frustrated and you're anxious and you're overwhelmed. Let's have some fun with that, right?
Mm. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's so funny. As you were answering, I was like, oh, that's right. Kelly works with women that are already at a level that a lot of people would be jealous of.
Yeah.
And yet, even they like, no matter what level you're at, there's always going to be an internal struggle. There's going to be self judgment. There's going to be shame. There's going to be imposter syndrome, which I know we've had a conversation about before.
Yes.
And I'm imagining that, people that find their way to my book and my content or any law of attraction content, part of their issue, whether they're even noticing it or not, is a shame or a self judgment or an imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I'm wondering for people that are watching this interview right now, obviously they're not working with you one on one, but are there any tips or any advice that you might give to someone that might be struggling with one of those issues to help them find their way out of it in a quicker or easier way?
Yeah. So the first thing is so obvious, but I feel it is so important to say almost on repeat. I say it everywhere, which is it's not your fault that you're struggling with that. The
Mm,
way our brains and our minds are wired means that between the age of 0 and 6, you're going to take in a whole bunch of programming that helps you survive as a human being. And depending on your what happens in your family, what happens to you individually, culturally, generationally, if there's trauma, dysfunction, you're going to take in a whole bunch of things that aren't so helpful either. And that's not your fault. We are designed until we're 6 to take everything that has been put on repeat in without any resistance whatsoever. So, what
mm,
we find is, I jokingly say to my clients all the time, is a 5-year-old running your business? And they
mm,
get a little like, what are you talking about? I'm 50 years old. What do you mean is a 5-year-old running my business? Well, all of us have beliefs we picked up somewhere between 0 and 6, not helping us very much. And they trigger things like imposter syndrome and self-worth questioning and doubts about ourselves. And what we don't realize is you don't intellectualize yourself out of that, because you
mm,
can tell yourself all day long, I'm worthy, I'm deserving, I'm intelligent, I'm lovable, I'm all of those things, which are all true. But unless your unconscious mind believes it, it's not going to matter. It's
right.
not going to matter. So I think the first thing is for people to understand that it's important that you don't come to the conclusion that there's something wrong with you, because that's what I hear all the time. I'm educated, or even if I'm not formally educated, I have lots of experience in an area. I know I'm a good person. I know that abundance is meant for everybody and there's enough to go around. So if I can't seem to get myself to this goal, objective state of being, what's wrong with me? Or even worse, do I just not deserve to have it? And that's why I'm not experiencing it. And
Mm,
that's where people really run into trouble. So,
yeah.
my biggest piece of advice is do not ever allow yourself to come to that conclusion.
And I'll add to that. Hearing that, I think sometimes people aren't even realizing that they're asking them the "What if I don't deserve it?" They have a feeling that there's something wrong.
Right.
It's not being articulated on their conscious mind, even though their conscious mind is taking it in, and more importantly, their subconscious is taking it in. I also love that statement of like, is a 5-year-old running your business?
Mhm.
Because for people watching this that aren't having a business, but it still pertains. Like, is a 5-year-old running your energy? Is a five year
Totally.
old running your life? Is a
Your
5-year-old running your
marriage.
mind? Yes, your
Yeah.
marriage.
Your bank account. Your, like, insert any word that's relevant to you. It doesn't have to be business if you're not a business owner.
Yes.
Are you parenting like a 5-year-old? Are you, I mean, it's really relevant for every important thing we're doing in life. So you make an excellent point.
Yeah, I just made it off yours. I'm piggybacking off of you. So thank you, Kelly, for being the one to make the excellent point. And I'll also say I love, the it's not your fault. It's it's so funny because it's very easy to gloss over because people hear that all the time
Mhm.
on in their life, but also like in TV and movies. It's just like it's a phrase with a lot, it's like a loaded term,
Mhm.
like love, like sex, like the law of attraction, where
Mhm.
it almost gets blasé or like who knows. But the thing about it is I hear that, and I don't put this in my book or anything because I don't go down this road.
Yeah.
But like when I hear that statement, I kind of like I hear it as like it's part of the full statement of it may not be your fault, but it's your responsibility. And I mean that in a
100%.
good way. And you were going to say yes?
Oh, 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
I, this is something I say so often. My clients roll their eyes at me. It's not your fault, but it is 100% your responsibility to learn how to do something about it. Once you realize, oh, wait a minute, this is not my fault that I have this programming. I didn't do this to myself. I didn't deserve this. This just happened. Right.
Hmm.
And now that I know that, it's my responsibility to develop the skill set to do something about it,
Yes. And it's a
which,
gift.
oh gosh, it's a huge gift. But what I find is that people, not all people, because I don't like to make generalizations, but a lot of people just really want a quick fix, because by the time they realize, oh, something, sort of one part of me is on one page and another part of me is in a different book, forget being on a different page, they're just not even close to each other, they're in a lot of pain. They're in a lot of emotional pain or financial pain or relationship pain, or their business is tanking or whatever it is. And so, because we're human, we just want to get out of it. Give me the thing that fixes it immediately. And that's not how it works. So, you have to be willing to take radical, what I call radical responsibility, meaning you commit time, money, and energy to changing all of this. So, you learn more about it and then you commit to doing things differently, because learning more isn't enough. That's only a piece of the puzzle, right?
Hmm.
Um, so that you give yourself the gift of change.
Yes. Yes. And you think about, I mean, I'm sure people can go an even deeper level, but the root of this, like response ability, your ability to respond.
Yeah.
And it's again like most people, or probably all people, at least on a conscious level in this plane, they don't sign up, so to speak, for their problems, but
Mhm.
they're there. And the only person that's going to care enough to do about it more than anyone else is the person. They might as well take that as a gift and say, well, what can I do for myself in this moment? Even though like I didn't screw up, it's not my fault, but someone's got to do something about it. And oh,
Mhm.
hey, last I checked, I still love myself enough that I probably should be the one to take this step. And again, obviously there are layers and levels of how much you can put in. But for me, just from a law of attraction standpoint, start with you 5 minutes a day
Mhm.
of gratitude or visualization will go so far because it communicates. And correct me if you disagree, but it communicates the subconscious mind and it sets off a chain reaction of momentum that it fuels itself and it snowballs. And before you know it, things have dramatically changed in a way that you didn't think you were worthy of, in a way you never would have expected, but now in a way that's just your life.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, again, just because I'm big on the nuances, right, is when people do what you say in the book and what you talk about all the time, and they have a gratitude or appreciation practice, the key is that it is mindful, intentional, and honest. So what I mean by that is you don't walk around making up things to be grateful for where you use the words but you don't have the feeling, because the
Mm,
unconscious mind does not communicate with language. The unconscious mind communicates with imagery and emotion. So the whole point of saying something, using an affirmation or using, a visual prompt for something, is not just because it's nice to look at or it's nice to say. It has to be strategic, meaning that you are saying, I'm grateful, but you're feeling it and you're able later on, if you want to call it up, say as an end of day practice, right? I'm always telling people the quality of your thoughts when you're falling asleep it's profoundly important. So you're not just saying, oh, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for that, and I'm blah, blah, blah. You have to be saying things that you actually feel and that you can call up in your mind, because that's the language of the unconscious mind.
I love hearing that. And I often tell people, because, obviously you're right, there has to be a genuine feeling of gratitude.
Mhm.
It's like some people, they'll tell themselves that they can't actually feel grateful for something, even though they know they should. And I'm curious on your opinion on this. Sometimes I'll tell them, well, if someone were to take the thing away from you, and you had to convince them why they should not take it away, and you gave all the reasons, wouldn't that instill gratitude? Like, I'm grateful for my laptop every day, but if I wasn't and someone tried to take it away from me, like, you could only have it if you tell me why. I'm like, well, I get to run my YouTube channel on it, I get to write my books, like, my whole business is run on this laptop, I get to talk to Kelly right now,
Yeah.
please no, don't take it. And all of a sudden, oh my god, I am so grateful for this laptop, and that'll
Right.
work across the board in everything in your life.
Yes, I love the practice of the absence of, because it really does very quickly shift your perspective. The other thing I like to do, because I'm a big fan of use the path of least resistance, right? Because what we're trying to get you to a place, whether it's mentally, emotionally, energetically, or behaviorally, that it is in your best interest. If it's
Yes.
in your best interest, you can serve others better, right? So let's not take the hardest path possible, because nobody's at the end of the line waving the, hey, you did great at struggling flag and waiting to pat you on the back for taking the hard route. So why not take the path of least resistance? And so what I do say to people is, okay, if gratitude feels like too much of a stretch for you, can you reach for appreciation? Can you reach for that's nice? Can you reach for, oh, even momentarily, that made me smile? Or momentarily, in the realization of the having of either the thing or the experience or the person, I feel calmer thinking about it. So if you feel like gratitude is just way too much of a leap right now from where you are, you can baby step your way there. You don't have to try to leap where you don't see a bridge. Build the bridge and build it by
Yes.
baby stepping. And for some people, I've noticed that practicing active appreciation versus gratitude is easier. And the reason why, I don't know if you've had this experience, I'd be really interested to hear your experience with this. But, the word gratitude comes from gratis, and gratis means free. And so
Mm,
I have seen some people struggle with gratitude when they receive something they did not work for, because
mm,
there's this paradigm of, I got that for nothing. I don't deserve that because I didn't do anything to receive that. And that somehow feels out of alignment for them and is very triggering. This is not everybody, but this is some people. It's this sense of like, why did I get something that awesome? I didn't do anything in exchange for it.
yeah.
But active appreciation, you can actively appreciate anything. You can actively appreciate that hater on Facebook who said something nasty to you, because it gave you the opportunity to sit back and go, what's going on with me here? Am I triggered? Am I detached from this? How do I choose to respond?
I
Right? Do
love
I
that.
choose to respond? Do I choose to ignore it? You can actively appreciate things that are not positive. And so that's another sort of kind of hack, I guess, that I
Right.
give to people who feel like gratitude just feels like a stretch for me. I always say, then let's work with active appreciation and you'll build yourself there.
Yeah. And it's interesting because as I heard you saying that, it kind of comes down again to self-worth,
Mhm.
self-judgment, imposter syndrome. Because me, I've never had difficulty in that specific way of describing, although I have identified that when I'm in a friendship with someone, I've traditionally, and I'm sure a lot of people do this also, I've always tried to make sure I was giving more than I was receiving.
Mhm.
I always wanted to make sure, I didn't owe them. And it wasn't that I wanted them to owe me. I just didn't want to feel like I was an imposition to them. And I
Mhm.
think that was also a self-worth issue that I worked on and got over. So I
Mhm.
definitely hear you. And I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad I made that connection for myself, because it's a great illustration that all this stuff is connected in a lot of ways that sometimes we don't see. And when we
Mhm.
don't see it, it's insidious, and that how
Yeah.
it might hold us back without us realizing it.
That is such a good point, because your level of self-awareness and your ability to connect the dots is going to directly impact your perception of things, the behaviors you choose, the paradigms that you kind of build and live your life and your work and your relationships by. And so it's very, very important to constantly be expanding your level of self-awareness. Um, it first of all opens the door for you to receive a whole lot more. And
Hmm.
second of all, even if in your expansion of your self awareness, you see things that either you don't like or could use a little bit of improvement, as long as you're not sitting in judgment of yourself and you're looking at them with curiosity through the eyes of curiosity, I wonder how. Where did that part of myself come from? Why is that side of me, that shadowy sort of side coming up? And you stay in curiosity and you don't go to judgment. You don't decide you're an awful person who doesn't deserve things. You decide, wow, I'm so glad I figured this out. And let's find the pathway to
Hmm.
shifting this or reducing this or replacing this. And that is really the key, because once we shift into judgment, it's ego driven from there. But when you stay in curiosity, it just the world opens up to you and will reveal to you avenues, opportunities, people, tools, things you didn't even know existed that will help you with the exact thing that just came to your awareness is a problem, right?
Yes.
And so that's really important as well.
Yeah, and it's a muscle you build. It's something
Oh,
where
yeah.
you almost have to accept the fact that you're not going to be perfect right away. And the way I would describe it, accept that something is going to take 10 years and it'll actually only take two.
Right.
And you just you let go of that attachment of trying to force it. And then you don't spend 10 years struggling. You spend 2 years enjoying the ride, enjoying the momentum as it builds more and more and more for you.
Yeah, I agree. I think a pitfall for people is, especially ambitious people, I find particularly, that this idea of a timeline and an arrival it's really problematic, because you become so hyper focused on how fast can I get to whatever or create whatever or get whatever, that you miss the juicy part, which is all the things happening between now and then. And then when you become that person or receive that thing or have that experience, it's not quite as amazing as it would have been if you stayed present for the majority of the ride.
Oh, love that. I'm so glad you're here right now, Kelly. I
Oh,
love your
thanks.
perspective. So one thing I wanted to make sure to ask you, because again, based on an earlier conversation, it's clear that you understood law of attraction, but it's not like, you know, you don't, that's not the primary way by which you work with your clients, but knowing that you appreciate it, I'm wondering, did you have an experience with it, or how did you learn about it that it made an impact on you, that you're like, okay, I'm incorporating this into my life?
Oh, yes. I've had multiple experiences with it. So I grew up at the tip top of New Jersey, right outside of Manhattan. And about 11, 12 years ago, my children were very little, and my husband and I were, as much as it's wonderful to live that close to New York City and just the cultural diversity and the richness of the area, it's just an amazing place. It's also one of the most expensive places in the United States to live. So we found ourselves with two very small children working obscene amounts of hours, being exhausted all the time and having very little to show for it, even though on paper it looked like we were making loads of money. It wasn't anywhere to be found, right? So we said, okay, for our future and for the future of our children, we need to move to an area of the country where this hard work can result in less hours working and a better lifestyle where we're more present with our children, instead of working multiple jobs and multiple hours and all this craziness. So we looked around the country, and I do not like the cold. I'm just going to be straight up about that. I don't like the cold. So we decided on just outside the Raleigh, North Carolina area. And at the time, I was working in a school, and I started to hear, and I can't tell you from where, I don't know where this came from, but it just came into my consciousness. Universal law came into my consciousness. I wonder if it was from The Secret. It might have been from The Secret. And, that movie's got its pros and cons, which is a whole other conversation. But what it did do that I'm appreciative of is it introduced me to the subject matter and some teachers that I have a lot of respect for. So I dove headfirst into studying universal law. And I really created my future, which was living in a beautiful community in this custom built house in this area with my kids in a really good school system, with my husband getting a promotion in his company here. And every single one of those things happened. Every single one of them happened. Now, did they happen on the exact timeline that I wanted? No. And that was the big lesson, right? You don't white knuckle grip the steering wheel. You set, you see it, you use your mind, you use your emotion, you use your energy, but then you have to be detached from the timeline and the how. And we ended up here. And then the second thing that happened was I was a psychotherapist for a long time. I came down here and I opened a private practice. It was thriving. And I realized I don't want to do this anymore, which was quite the realization after we spent loads of money opening up a practice.
Whoops.
I know. And, life just sort of came knocking on the door as it does and was whispering in my ear saying, you have other work to do. And I know enough to know that you don't ignore it when life shows up and knocks on your door like that. You have to listen, because eventually, if you don't, it's going to make it really uncomfortable for you not to listen.
It's going to get you there one way or another. You might as well enjoy the process.
Yeah, whether you're kicking and screaming or you're just floating down the river in the boat, but you're gonna get there one way or another. So I set this intention to be able to hire a business coach that I really wanted to work with, and I had absolutely no idea where I was going to come up with that extra income. And so I printed out a fake check. I wrote it to myself for the exact amount of money that it would cost for me to hire this business coach. And I, just wrote a little note to myself that it was, I'm writing this check to myself to receive this amount of money that will then be used to pass forward and receive the value from this coach. And I tucked it away. I kept it on my desk at my psychotherapy office because I knew that coach was going to help me get out of the field and into what I'm doing now. So I really saw that as this amazing opportunity, but I had no idea where the money was going to come from. And I don't know, maybe 10 days later, after writing the check, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who's an attorney. And he said, we would like to pay you to be an expert witness in a big case that we have coming up. Is that something you would be interested in? And I said, absolutely. The only other thing I ever thought of being in life was an attorney. So I thought, oh my gosh, yes, this is so exciting. And I can be very helpful for your case. And he said, we will pay you for this. And he told me the amount, and it was the exact amount I had written on my check.
Wow.
And I went,
it's like a movie.
Message received. Thank you very much. I still have that letter and his offer with the amount and the check I had written, which is dated. I still have it in a folder. I keep it. I will never, ever throw it out because it reminds me that with clarity and alignment, the universe can work with immense speed because the universe doesn't see size. You could ask for $1 million or $100 to the universe. It's no different. It's how you interact with the energy of that makes the difference.
Wow. I'm not sure the format of this episode, but that might have to be the soundbite at the beginning.
Yeah.
If I put it like that in the video, who knows?
Yeah.
That is such, and if not, I hope people listening that I'm considering that because there's so much power to what you just said there. So you've got the YouTube progress bar. Bring it back 30 seconds and listen to Kelly again. What she said right there. That's super super insightful.
I'm
Um,
fortunate. I have a bunch of those stories. I do. And I'm not going to say to people everything works out in 10 days. Just write yourself a blank check and everything's going to work out in 10 days, right?
And I think the important piece of that is, well, yeah, you're taking action. Like something,
Yes.
this isn't always about the universe magically making something happen in an energetic way because
No.
everything is energy. This water bottle is energy.
Right.
So it's like, it's really important because, again, we get stuck on words. I think you're giving wonderful illustration that solutions come and you really want to be open to them and how they might come because it might come it might even come in a negative way. It might come from a friend who
Yeah.
does you a favor who then expects something later. Well, that's a whole side thing. If they did
Yeah.
something that changed your life, just at least take that and deal with the other piece. Like let things come, enjoy them. Like you said, the path of least resistance.
Yes.
Don't resist and like invite the solution in because it wants to come and the solution wants you just as desperately as you want the solution. You just don't hear its voice screaming at you, but it wants you just as much.
Well, and I think it's from the poet Rumi who said, everything you seek is also seeking you. And
Yes.
I remind myself of that. I remind my clients of that, that the deep desires you have that were planted in you, it's not some cosmic joke that you were given those particular desires to experience your life in a certain way. You were giving that because that experience is also seeking you. That's how what I call, the divine collective consciousness gets to experience itself through us. So it's not some joke that you have a desire to own a horse farm or you have a desire to find, to whatever it is that got put in you for a reason. So treat it with, the utmost respect and have the assumption and expectation that if you've been given the desire, there is a way.
Oh, I love it. I wish we had 5 hours because I would just
I
talk your
know.
ear off like for the whole way. I know we're gonna wrap up soon. Now, there was a couple, like one or two more questions in my head I want to make sure to ask you.
Sure.
One was, if people want to find out more about you and connect with you, because this is inspiring stuff. I know I would want to if I didn't know you already. What's the best way for them to do so?
The best way is on social media. I answer all of my own DMs and messages. So you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. Right now, my team is starting up a LinkedIn account. So you can definitely find me and communicate with me over there and let me know what you want to hear more about because I'm happy to do videos about it, talk more about it. And I'm more interested in talking about what you want to hear about than what I feel like talking about because I want it to be valuable. So I love it when people reach out and connect and just let me know what their thoughts are.
Cool. Well, I'll put those links in the description of this video, so it'll be very
Awesome.
easy for people to click on and find you in whatever way works best for them. Last question that just comes to mind, just because I know we've gone down so many rabbit holes here and they've all been so valuable. I really it's gonna be a very open-ended, complicated question because
Sure.
I want you to have an option on how you answer it. But
Sure.
whether it's people out there listening right now or a past version of yourself from 20 years ago, whether it's business advice, life advice, law of attraction advice,
Mhm.
what's like a kind of go away final piece of value that you would want to put out there or share with someone that could really benefit on it based on this conversation or anything else that's in your judgment?
Mhm. This is what it would be. So learn how to put all your chips in on you. And the reason why is because I think the greatest tragedy that exists is people who pass away who sort of still have that song in their heart, whether it's the expression of life through their relationships or nonprofit work or building a business or corporate career or whatever it is. Uh, just learn how to go all in on you because when you double down and bet on yourself, the universe will respond to that level of clarity and confidence and high vibration. And so, whatever it is you need to do to be able to get up every day and say, outside things might look a little crazy, but that makes no difference to me because I bet on me every time, you're going to find that your path is more abundant, more enjoyable, more full than you could even imagine. So that's what I would say. That's what I would leave you with.
Awesome. Well, Kelly, thank you so much. A quick little note here, just because it's been so brilliant. Those that watch my videos know that every time I do a video, I say comment below. And, every person that comments, they're entered into that month's contest for my 90-day program, Gravity of the Cosmos. I invite
Nice.
people listening to this, comment on anything from Kelly today that you've heard that really spoke to you, that you can take action on, that you could implement, that you can bet on yourself with. And of course, that's an automatic entry into the contest for that program. But more importantly, listen back to this, listen to these gold nuggets. Kelly, you were brilliant. I'm patting myself on the back as to reminding myself when I kind of noticed that Kelly might be like a really good talk for this. So I'm glad I reached out to you. But more importantly, I'm so grateful that you really chose to take time out and share this gift and this vision, because you're the real deal, and people can't, people got to pay for your time. You're the real deal. And you were basically hand feeding on a silver platter some really high level, high price advice for free. So thank you so much for being here and facilitating and giving my audience all this insight. I really do appreciate it.
I, again, at the risk of sounding repetitive, I am just as grateful. Anytime I get to have conversations of this quality and this depth, my friends joke all the time. They say, "Oh, you are allergic to surface," which is true. I'm not, you don't want me at a party. I'm not good. Like, I can't do those conversations very well, but these I could do all day long. So the fact that you gave me an opportunity to have such a deep, meaty, feel good conversation today, and also maybe help even just one person in your audience or mine, that's really a gift. So thank you for giving it to me. And thank you to just the listeners and the watchers for tuning in and for commenting and letting us know what your takeaways were, because that helps us serve you better. So thank you so much for having me today.